Hey, welcome to a new video. Discovered without clothes and alone in the German wilderness in 1725, a boy known as Peter the Wild Boy was about 11 years old at the time of his rescue. At around the age of 12, Peter was taken to London, where he became the human pet of King George I. Exhibiting animal-like behaviors such as running on all fours and stealing from the pockets of courtiers, he earned the nickname Wild Boy. Despite his novelty, Peter's behaviors eventually became too much for the palace inhabitants, leading to his relocation to a farm in Hertfordshire, where he spent his remaining years under the care of compassionate farmers. He had to wear a collar inscribed with Peter, the Wild Man of Hanover. Upon his death in 1785, he was laid to rest in the cemetery of St. Mary in Northchurch. Subsequent examination of Peter's portrait suggests he may have suffered from Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a rare genetic disorder associated with distinctive facial features and intellectual disability, which may shed light on his parents' decision to abandon him.
Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video.
One of the most sensational stories of feral children revolves around two girls, Amala and Kamala, who were reportedly raised by a she-wolf. In 1920, a reverend encountered a she-wolf with her cubs, two of whom had human features, with long, tangled hair. They were brought to an orphanage in Midnapore, India, where the reverend and his wife were stationed. The girls walked on all fours, their knees and palms calloused from habitual movement. They had a preference for raw meat and lapped up liquids with their tongues, often consuming food in a crouched position. Their thick red lips kept their tongues permanently protruded, and they panted like wolves, exhibiting nocturnal habits such as prowling and howling. Despite their aversion to human contact, the Reverend gradually formed a bond with Kamala through tenderness and affection. Through meticulous efforts in skin softening, nutrition, and gentle touch, she succeeded in gaining Kamala's trust and creating an environment conducive to learning. After 5 years in the orphanage, Kamala showed some intellectual progress. In 2008, Russian social workers rescued a 7-year-old boy who could only communicate by chirping, due to being raised as a pet by his mother. Russian media reported that the child, suffering from what was termed Mowgli syndrome, was found in a small 2-room apartment resembling an aviary, filled with cages of numerous birds, bird feed, and droppings. A social worker named Galina Volskaya, involved in the rescue operation, explained to the Russian newspaper Pravda that the boy was treated as a pet by his 31-year-old mother. Due to her silence towards him, the boy's primary means of communication were with the birds around him. The mother, who kept her own household birds and also fed wild birds, neglected her son. However, she never verbally communicated with him, leaving the birds as his companions and teachers of their language. The boy is currently staying in a foster home and is about to be transferred to a psychological care center for further assistance and support.
The following story is very special because this boy, whose name was never revealed, seems to have been raised by a group of gazelles. The villagers knew him in the Syrian desert, simply as the boy who hung out with the gazelles. When anthropologist Jean-Claude Auger heard about him, he asked around and looked for him. When he found him, he saw that the boy walked on all fours, but in some cases he also stood upright. Jean-Claude then thought that perhaps the gazelle boy was lost or abandoned in the wild. He saw him eating mostly desert roots and sometimes lizards and worms. Some people say the boy could run as fast as 30 to 35 miles per hour, or 50 to 55 kilometers per hour, just like the gazelles. Several attempts were also said to have been made to capture him, but because of his speed, they could not get hold of the boy.
Social workers made a chilling discovery when they found a 2-year-old boy, only known as Sasha T, living with goats in a filthy house. Confined to a room by his mother, Sasha suffered from severe malnutrition and neglect. He had never been taught basic skills such as speaking, eating properly, or using a toilet. Irina Boshkova, a social worker, described the chilling scene upon their arrival. Sasha T was alone in a cold room, naked and vulnerable. The conditions were horrific, with the air thick with filth and neglect. Recognizing the danger, they quickly rushed Sasha to the hospital. Due to the severity of his neglect, Sasha's brain development was severely delayed, and he weighed significantly less than other children his age. He also lacked the most basic skills for his age, such as holding a spoon or playing with toys. In 1799, a man named Jean-Marc was intrigued by reports of a boy abandoned in the forests of Aveyron, France, purportedly raised by wolves. Dubbed Victor the Wild Boy of Aveyron, he became the centerpiece of Jean's groundbreaking experiment aimed at proving the tabula rasa theory. He believed that individuals could be shaped into whatever one desired with the right upbringing and guidance. Victor, likely in his early teens and suffering from severe mental issues, was brought by Jean to Paris and placed under the care of his housekeeper. Despite his initial challenges, lack of speech, refusal of clothing, and rejection of cooked food, Victor showed remarkable progress under Jean's guidance. With patient instruction and dedicated care from Jean's housekeeper, Victor learned basic communication skills and began to interact with others.
Samarth Bengari has become popular as the modern Mowgli. Like Tippy, he is not a feral child, but he has developed an affectionate bond with long-tailed monkeys. One day, he was seen in his village in South India, happily interacting with a whole group of monkeys. Long-tailed monkeys are not always friendly, so when the locals saw the boy, they realized that he had developed a special bond with the monkeys. According to the story, the boy would play with them every day, and the monkeys became his best friends. If the boy was still asleep early in the morning, they would sometimes wake him up and sit with him for hours. The incredible thing about this is that most of the long-tailed monkeys live 250 miles, or 400 kilometers away from his home. So it seems that the monkeys come to see him specifically. How cool is that?
Reflecting on her early years, Marina Chapman shares a remarkable tale of growing up solely among apes in the depths of the Colombian jungle. During this time, she learned the art of survival, gathering berries and roots, scavenging for bananas left behind by her primate companions, seeking shelter in tree hollows, and traversing the terrain on all fours. Her life took a drastic turn when she was eventually rescued by hunters after losing her ability to communicate in the human language. She claims to have been trafficked to a brothel in the city of Cucuta, lived as a street child, and suffered under the control of a mafia family. Eventually, she found salvation through the intervention of a neighbor, and she relocated to Bradford, Yorkshire. After this ordeal, she forged bonds with the young apes, closely observed their behavior, and learned invaluable survival techniques such as tree climbing and self-care. John Sabunya was estimated to be 2 or 3 years old, although Paul and Molly, the couple who eventually took him in, later established a symbolic birthday for him to mark the occasion. His traumatic childhood began when his father murdered his mother, forcing John to flee into the jungle, fearing for his own life. Over the next 8 months to a year, John lived in the wild, relying on instinct and the meager provisions that nature provided. His memories of those early days are vague, but he recalls the initial encounters with monkeys cautiously approaching him and eventually offering offerings of carrots, nuts, sweet potatoes, and cassava. Initially wary, the primates gradually accepted him into their midst and taught him essential survival skills such as foraging for food and navigating through dense foliage. Amidst the turmoil of a civil war ravaging the region, few people ventured into the remote jungle where John resided. Months later, Millie, a local resident, found him in the forest among the monkeys. John was then brought back to Millie's village, where his feral upbringing became evident. His body was covered with a thick coat, a common feature among feral children, while his knees bore the marks of intensive use, almost whitened from constant crawling. His nails had grown long and curved, a result of life in the wild, and he had not acquired any form of domestic habits.
This is Daniel, better known as Goat Boy. Very little is known about Daniel, and only one picture of him can be found on the internet. No one even knows his real name, and Daniel was just a name given to him by a group of researchers. The boy was found in 1990, living among some goats in the Andes Mountains of Peru. For 8 years, he lived by drinking goat's milk and eating wild berries and roots. He walked on all fours, and he did not know how to speak human language, as he only knew the language of the goats. What else happened to Daniel is unclear. It is also not known where he is now. Let's hope he is doing well.
Meet Sujit Kumar, a 32-year-old Fijian known as the boy raised as a chicken. Despite his age, those who care for him still refer to him as a boy. Sujit never acquired the ability to speak, and is just now beginning to grasp elementary human behaviors. He exhibited behaviors such as pecking at his food and assuming a squatting position as if brooding. His fingers were curved inward from years of scratching in the mud, and he communicated through rapid clicking sounds with his tongue. His journey to the Samabula Old People's Home in Suva, Fiji, began when welfare officers found him tied to his bed in a nursing home. He had been bound for 2 decades after being found abandoned one fateful night in the middle of the road. Elizabeth Clayton played a crucial role in his rescue, and through her investigation, she uncovered Sujit's tragic past. His grandfather subjected 6-year-old Sujit to confinement in a chicken coop, where he endured years of isolation and neglect, away around the age of 35 in 1895. Between the ages of 7 and 19, Marcos Rodriguez endured a solitary existence, far removed from civilization, in the rugged Sierra Morena, a desolate mountain region stretching across southern Spain. According to his story, he was abandoned and left to fend for himself at the tender age of 7 in 1953. Cut off from human contact, he found comfort and protection among wolves, which became his surrogate family. Without human interaction, he gradually lost the ability to verbally communicate and began to bark, scream, and howl. 12 years later, police stumbled upon him concealed in the mountains, dressed in deer skins and with unkempt hair. In his attempt to evade arrest, he was apprehended, his hands were bound, and he was brought to the nearest village. Eventually, a compassionate young priest arranged for his transfer to a hospital wing of a monastery in Madrid, where he received education under the guidance of nuns for a year. Over the past 5 decades since his discovery in the wild, Rodriguez has struggled to conform to societal norms. He wandered among monasteries, dilapidated buildings, and hostels throughout Spain, taking menial jobs in construction, bars, nightclubs, and hotels, while enduring abuse and theft due to his naivety. Despite occasional acts of kindness, he remained largely marginalized by society and struggled to adjust to human interactions. A girl named Madina from central Russia unfortunately didn't have good parents either, so she sought friendship among a group of street dogs. Since her birth, her mother, who was always drunk, never paid attention to her. She ignored Madina for most of her life, and her father left right after she was born. Madina was not allowed by her mother to eat at the table, so she ate and slept with the dogs. So it didn't take too long for her to start behaving like a real dog. She would chew on bones and growl when people came near. When Madina was 3 years old, she was found by a group of people who saw her walking on all fours. The girl was said to have known only 2 words, yes and no. Fortunately, Madina is physically and mentally healthy despite what she went through. In the 19th century, a man named Dina Sanichar, often compared to the fictional character Mowgli, underwent a remarkable upbringing. Raised by wolves in the Indian wilderness, he spent his formative years believing he was one of them. His story took a dramatic turn when hunters discovered him in a cave in Uttar Pradesh in February 1867 and brought him to a nearby orphanage. At the Sikandra Mission Orphanage, missionaries attempted to teach Dina the basic principles of human life, such as walking and speaking. However, bridging the gap between human behavior and animal instincts proved insurmountable for him. Unlike the Disney version of Mowgli's story, Dina's story did not end with a seamless integration into human society. During his time at the orphanage, which dubbed him the nickname Wolf Boy, he exhibited more the behavior of a wild animal than that of a human. Additionally, he moved on all fours, struggled to stand upright, and subsisted solely on raw meat and bones as nourishment. Despite efforts to reintegrate him into human society, Dina never acquired the ability to speak or fully adapt before he passed away around the age of 35 in 1895. A 1-year-old boy managed to survive on the streets thanks to the care of wild cats. This boy was discovered in 2008 by police in Misiones, Argentina, surrounded by a group of 8 cats. Doctors speculate that during cold nights, the cats cuddled up to the boy, providing warmth that likely saved his life. The boy was seen eating scraps given to him by his furry companions while they licked him. The cats protected him by hissing when authorities approached. According to reports, the cats seemed to understand the boy's vulnerable nature and acted as his guardians. Authorities managed to locate the boy's homeless father, who explained that he had lost sight of his son while collecting cardboard to sell a few days earlier. He shared that the cats had always shown a protective instinct toward his son. After nearly a decade of living with the wrong family, a woman believed to have survived as a feral child in the Cambodian jungle has been reunited with her biological father. Discovered while wandering in the wild, covered in mud, she was initially embraced by a Cambodian family. This family mistook her for their long-lost daughter, Rochom, who disappeared at the age of 8 in 1989 while herding water buffaloes. Dubbed the Jungle Girl, she was thought to have spent 18 years navigating the untamed wilderness of Cambodia. However, her true identity recently came to light when her biological father, 70-year-old Vietnamese man Pio, recognized her through photos on Facebook. He revealed that she was actually his daughter, Tak, who disappeared in 2006, just a year before she was found. Tak's journey into the jungle began when a farmer caught her sneaking into a village in 2007, attempting to steal food. As she struggled to adapt to civilization, she exhibited signs of mental health issues. Additionally, she often rejected clothing, and multiple times expressed the desire to return to the jungle. In 1731, residents of Sangy, France were startled by the discovery of a young girl dressed in tattered animal hides stealing apples from an orchard. Estimating her age proved challenging, ranging from 10 to 18 years old. When confronted by villagers with a bulldog, she quickly dispatched the animal with a single fatal blow before disappearing into the woods. Eventually captured, it became apparent that she possessed no form of formal language and communicated through animal sounds. Admitted to a hospital in Chalons, she was baptized as Marie-Angélique Memmie LeBlanc. Efforts to civilize her began immediately, revealing that her exclusive diet consisted of raw meat, as cooked food caused her teeth to fall out. Her true origins came to light in 1755 with the publication of an account of a savage girl by biographer Marie-Catherine Omaseleke. LeBlanc, purportedly a Native American girl, was blackened and sold as a slave in Wisconsin at the age of 7. After a shipwreck, she survived alongside another girl by living as wild beings in the wilderness and feeding on raw wild animals.
The following story is from a boy named Sujit Kumar from Fiji. He lost both his parents at a young age and was therefore placed under the guardianship of his grandfather. But the boy did not like living with the old man, as he had to spend most of his childhood in a chicken shack. One night he escaped and was found in the middle of the road by some people. They knew nothing about the boy, however. A concerned citizen named Elizabeth became interested in his case and did some research into his past. She found out that the boy had to adapt to the ways of the chickens. He picked at his food and his fingers were turned inward as a result of scratching the ground. Also, the boy would communicate with the chickens by making a clicking sound with his tongue. In the end, it would have taken a long time for the boy to get used to being a normal person again. The fate of this next boy took a remarkable turn when he was seized by grizzly bears shortly after his birth. From learning the art of hygiene in trees to mastering fishing techniques under Mama Bear's guidance, the boy adapted to his unconventional upbringing. Mama Bears were said to have protective instincts, and she was vigilant over the boy to shield him from lurking wolves. Communication was limited to the language of the bears, consisting of growls. Amidst the noisy eating habits of the bears, the boy found solace in quietly dining with utensils, in contrast to the vocal feasting rituals of the bears. Eventually, the boy grew wary of the bears and determined to lead a life outside of the wilderness, deciding to bid farewell to his bear companions. However, what became of him later remains a mystery to this day.
For Oxana Malaya, barking, growling, and moving on all fours were not just play acting. It was survival. Abandoned by her alcoholic parents at the tender age of 3, she found solace and companionship among stray dogs in her impoverished village of Novoblahoveshchenka, Ukraine. Seeking warmth and protection, Oksana took refuge in a kennel with a dog named Anita, where she lived for the next 5 years. Oksana was embraced by the pack and gradually adopted their behaviors as her own. Communication consisted of barking and snarling, echoing the language of her canine companions. She licked herself clean, ate raw meat, scavenged through trash for food, panted, and moved on all fours. Dina Sanichar, director of the special care institution where Oksana now resides, recalls her more as a dog than a human child. However, the transition back to human society proved challenging, as she struggled to adapt to her new environment after years of living among dogs.
Marcos Rodriguez Pantoja is one of the most famous cases of feral children. He lost his mother at a very young age, and when he was 7, his evil stepmother sold him to a goat herder. When the goat herder died, Marcos had nowhere to go. He lived alone for a while and was on his own, until he found wolves who treated him like their own cub. During his stay with them, he lost his language ability and learned to bark and howl at the moon. 12 years later, a group of people found him in the mountains of Sierra Morena, wearing a deer skin. Although he tried to flee from them, they managed to capture the boy and took him to a nearby village. He was placed in a monastery hospital where nuns helped him adjust to his new surroundings. Shamdeo, better known as the Wolf Boy, was discovered in 1972 while playing with wolf cubs in an Indian forest at the tender age of 4. In India, it's known that the wolves inhabit the vast ravines along rivers. This led to the hypothesis that the child in question may have been raised in an environment possibly dominated by wolves, given the absence of bears and baboons. The boy was found in Uttar Pradesh, and according to the story, was raised by wolves. His survival alongside wolves left a physical imprint on him, which is evident in his dark skin, sharpened teeth, elongated nails, tangled hair, and calloused palms, elbows, and knees. His diet consisted of hunting chickens and consuming soil and blood. In 1978, Shamdeo was admitted to the Mother Teresa's home for the destitute and dying in Lucknow, where he was given the name Pascal. Under their care, he gradually transitioned away from consuming raw meat. Despite efforts to integrate him into human society, his ability to communicate verbally remained severely limited by his feral upbringing.
In October 1970, a frail and hunched figure entered a welfare office in Los Angeles County, her hands held up in an odd manner resembling a rabbit. Initially believed to be about 6 or 7 years old, the girl's appearance fascinated welfare officials. It was her mother, afflicted with cataracts, who had accidentally brought her along to the office while seeking services for the blind. However, officials soon realized that the girl, whom they would later call Genie to protect her identity, was unlike any child they had encountered before. Genie exhibited signs of severe neglect and abuse. Unable to speak, incontinent, she drooled and spat. Her hands bore an unusual feature: 2 almost complete sets of teeth, a rare dental condition known as supernumeraries. It later emerged that Genie had been subjected to unspeakable cruelty by her deranged father, who had confined her in a homemade straitjacket from birth and kept her isolated in a silent room. He forbade her from crying, speaking, or making any sound and treated her with the cruelty of a wild animal. After her rescue, she was transferred to the Children's Hospital of LA and placed under court guardianship.
Unlike Sidi and Adara, John Sabunya was not lost in the jungle, but he had run away from his family. John, who was from Uganda, had a terrible experience with his parents that traumatized him. He saw the deep Ugandan jungle as an escape, but the jungle became not only his escape, for it was also the place where he found a wonderful family, among the monkeys. He was just 2 years old at the time, but his newfound family guarded and protected him, and they also eventually taught him how to move through the trees. 2 years later, John was discovered by a woman from a nearby tribe who was looking for food. When she encountered the wild boy, she rushed back and informed the villagers. They rescued John, but it was not easy because they had to deal with angry monkeys who threw sticks and stones at them to protect John. Eventually, John was taken to a Christian orphanage where he was cared for. Nagy and Molnar, 2 fishermen from Côte d'Ivoire, discovered a boy of about 8 to 10 years old. On March 17, 1749, the boy named Hany was found, who, despite his human form, exhibited animalistic behavior. They brought him to an estate where he was temporarily baptized due to his inability to speak. The boy's name was derived from the Hungarian word for marshy area, reflecting his origin. Eventually, the boy came under the care of the steward of the estate. Initially, he survived on grass, hay, and straw, and had a fear of humans, instinctively seeking refuge in water when danger threatened. Despite his aversion to land, he proved to be a skilled swimmer, and adept at catching fish underwater. It took a year for him to become accustomed to cooked meals and clothing. He gradually transformed into a semblance of a man. As the local populace began to trust him, Hany seized the opportunity to flee. Although there were still sightings of him, he always disappeared beneath the water's surface. Over time, the legend of this boy grew, with numerous folk tales depicting him as a half-fish, half-human being, residing in a nearby lake. Ivan Mishukov was a young child from a poor family, who found himself on the harsh streets of Moscow in the 1990s. He sensed the vigilant presence of stray dogs and quickly learned that offering food earned their protection and warmth. Over time, trust developed, and at just 4 years old, Ivan became the leader of the pack. But his newfound sense of belonging was short-lived. Authorities intervened, using bait to distract the dogs while they captured Ivan, leaving him vulnerable without their protective presence. Prior to his time on the streets, he had a difficult childhood under the care of an alcoholic grandfather who often left him to fend for himself for days on end. Seeking refuge, Ivan found comfort among stray dogs in the mid-1990s while begging for food alongside his canine companions near Moscow. Throughout 2 years of companionship, Ivan formed deep bonds with the dogs, affectionately calling them Jessie, Goga, Masha, and Seva. Despite multiple attempts, authorities struggled to separate Ivan from his faithful canine family, as the dogs fiercely protected him. Eventually rescued at the age of 5 or 6, Ivan was torn between his human saviors and the dogs he considered family. Tragically, local officials chose to euthanize the dogs. When Sidi Muhammad was about 5 years old, he wandered too far from his home in North Africa and ended up in the wilderness, where he found a new family among the ostriches. The boy remembers finding an ostrich nest with several youngsters hatching. Surprisingly, the wild animals did not behave aggressively towards Sidi. Instead, Sidi won their trust and became friends with them. The ostriches learned Sidi how to run fast while they covered him under their wings at night. He also adapted to their diet, as he ate mostly grass. 6 years later, a group of ostrich hunters discovered Sidi among the animals, and he was taken to human civilization. I came across another story of an ostrich boy named Hadara. He got lost in the Sahara when he was only 2 years old. Like Sidi, he too was rescued after living with the ostriches for a few years. In 1912, a 2-year-old boy from India was seized by a leopardess. 3 years later, a hunter killed the leopardess and discovered her 3 cubs, one of which was the now 5-year-old boy. He returned to his family in a small village in India, and the boy exhibited remarkable traits. Initially, he moved on all fours with remarkable agility, toes arched even upward, and his hands and feet were hardened by the elements. He was wild, attacking anyone who approached, surviving on raw village chickens, and communicated only by growling. Despite his feral behavior, the boy possessed incredible speed when running on all fours, comparable to the pace of an upright man. Over time, he began to adapt to human habits. He even learned to speak and walk upright. But tragically, he gradually lost his sight, a hereditary condition that also affected others in his family. Would you like to be raised in the jungle by an animal? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.